Good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, dear friends, partners, it's a real honor and pleasure to be here at this Inspire and Connect East Africa hosted by BPI France. And thank you, BPI France, for bringing us together here to discuss innovation, partnerships across Africa, and of course, sustainable industrialization. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nachouat Meghouar, and I'm the Managing Director of the French African Foundation. Since our creation in 2019, our mission is to empower and to showcase the next generation of African and French leaders that are committed to driving positive change, innovation, and growth across Africa. We have a flagship program that is a Young Leader program that consists in training, identifying talent, and gathering them in France 1 week, and 1 week in an African country for mentoring, visits, training, networking. And this allowed us to build the largest network of young professionals, African ones and French ones, a network made by 180 leaders across 40 African countries, and that are operating in more than 30 sectors. Of course, many of them are Kenyan. We actually have here in Kenya, or based in Kenya, more than 21 since our creation, so it's a lot. And some of them, alongside with our distinguished guests, are here today to share insights, to engage with you, and to talk also, to connect, to network, as that's the goal of that event. So again, thank you for being here, and let's have a very inspiring afternoon. And start with our first panel that is dedicated to France and Kenya collaboration to drive innovation and Africa's economic future. So for that panel, I have the privilege to ask the French ambassador to Kenya and Somalia, Arnaud Suquet. Your Excellency, if you can join the stage. Ferdinand Omaliala, if you can join us for having that inspiring conversation. And we have also the chance to have Angela OCHUMBA with us, which is one of our alumni and who is Senior Legal Counsel at Standard Chartered Bank. So, as we talk about global opportunities, there are also global challenges. And to tackle them, we thought that international collaboration, and especially France and Kenya's one, could unlock a lot of transformative opportunities in Eastern Africa, and of course here in Kenya. So let's start maybe with you, Ferdinand. How do you think that partnerships, global ones, and especially with France, can help support sports industry and globally help driving economies, opportunities?
Sorry. Of course, we are looking at different aspects of investments, and it's never coming to you. So me, where I'm sitting, I'm looking at a situation where having global partnerships, especially investing in Africa and Kenya as a country, could be so advantageous to specifically athletes, not just sprinters, not just athletes like running on track, but different sports, because now I'm looking at a situation where I'm signing contracts with different international companies, not specifically with the Kenyan companies. So for me, I'll call for global partnerships for private sectors, because going into the other side, you know what I'm talking about, is a bit slow into generation of income into the athletes. But looking at the global partnership private sector, I think that's the way that we should be looking at, and having investors invest directly into different clubs privately. I've seen what's been done by basketball in Kenya, and they're building different courts in the country, which is a very good thing. I'm looking at a way we'll have a situation like in the US, for example. Every school, every high school has a track. In Kenya, if you can get that coming into the country, we'll have so much talent being tapped, because we only have like 3 or 4 tracks in the country, and we have so much talent. So if we can have the same thing being done by basketballers have it on track and even different sports. Then that's a way of just getting this talent, raw talent from grassroots level.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Your Excellency. Diplomacy is key. It can help to enhance these partnerships. So how France support Kenya's in different successful partnerships? Can you share with us examples?
Yeah, thank you very much. And very pleased to be in a panel which is supposed to be for young leaders. So I'll put myself in that group. I'll make that decision and I don't think I'll be challenged. So thank you very much for bringing me in this panel. I just want to build on what Ferdinand was saying. Because sports diplomacy is an entire part of our priority and what we're doing together with the Kenyans. What Ferdinand has not said, that he's also a member of the athletic club of Mericas in south of France. He trains there. And you know, the story of the Olympics has brought France and Kenya sport ecosystem together. Now, Mericas, the south of France, who was actually hosting the Kenyan delegation, the Olympic team, and I think you've been part of it. You're acclimatized, you're trained there. Now the idea is to twin both cities and work together, because I think, you know, the talent in Kenya, and I will come back to it, you know, is obvious. Sprint, I mean, we're talking long distance, you know. Our best athlete comes and train here in Kenya. They still don't make it to, you know, they'll still see the back of the Kenyans. But they train here because that's a center of excellence for long distance running. And so we want to, as much as we want to grow sport, and sport, I think, to your point here, as an industry, as a business, we want to see, you know, and we've done it in France. So we want to share experience. We don't want to say, you know, Kenya do it like us, but we have experience to share. And if sports is to grow, and I think it can in Kenya as an industry, as a business, we want to be a partner of Kenya. So that's one of the examples. Now you're talking about youth, and I think youth is talent, which is obvious and everywhere in Kenya, but also skills. And so as much as we develop our partnership, we always keep that in mind, you know, how together we can bring those skills. I'll give you an example. France, and we'll be launching that in about 10 days, we launch our partnership with the University of Nairobi. Together with companies, we're gonna make a partnership between the Paris-Saclay University and a consortium of the best engineering schools in France and the University of Nairobi, the engineering science complex. The aim is bring skills and then opportunities, but also we have to learn from Kenya, from, you know, the dynamism, the innovative nature of the young Kenyan people, and that can help us along the way. So those are a few examples. There's much, much more, but I think, and I would like, as you're also sitting as a French African Foundation, France, we usually say that 10% of the French population is of African descent. We don't necessarily have a Kenyan diaspora in France, but I encourage the young people, those French young people who have an interest in Africa, come here, invest, but also study. We have now partnerships between universities in France, like Sciences Po, and so students from Sciences Po coming here for a semester and studying in the University of Strasbourg. So we want exchange both ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. It's a very important point, and it's your call is well had. We launched actually at the foundation big events with Sciences Po in partnership with Sciences Po to promote African excellence and to make students more and more interested in having professional careers in Africa. So definitely. If we look at the legal framework, Angela, can you give us some insight of how legal framework can help actually foster those partnerships, you know, for private investors, but also for institutional ones?
Okay, so in terms of innovation and creativity, I think a good starting point would be the fact that Kenya is a tech hub. That's already sign enough that there's room for creativity to be nurtured. I think a lot more can still be done to like improve, the structures around innovation, particularly from a legal perspective. I think a lot needs to be done, like I mentioned during the last panel, to improve our ranking on the Global Innovation Index. We could be second in sub-Saharan Africa, but we still, lag behind relative to the rest of the world. In terms of legal frameworks, I think a lot more needs to be done to make our tax regime a lot more predictable and progressive. On the sustainability side, I think we have the existing frameworks, that are intended to manage climate risk. And I'm looking at the recent guidelines published by the Central Bank of Kenya are quite, robust and benchmarked against international standards, which pretty means that a lot of the global standards or benchmarks are probably swept up in the process. Kenya also just came up with a green taxonomy. It mirrors a lot of the EU green taxonomy, and that is already, good enough in terms of steps in the right direction. We still need to have a lot more done with regard to providing opportunities for purposes of accessing transition financing.
Yeah. Thank you. So we also have, we started, of course, to talk about training and youth empowerment. Ferdinand, can you tell us concretely what actions do you have at the foundation that support the youth and that can be scaled in Kenya and even in the whole region to support sport industry and professionalize them?
One of the things that we want to do in terms of developing and having this youth just have the self-empowerment is I want to create different events. I want to have different events in different sports with a lot of money because I want to, like I said, I want to bring money into the sport. And one thing that moves the world right now is money. You can't be seeing me on TV, but I'm living a life that can't really act up and just level up to that level. So that's one thing I want to do. Next year, I want to bring a very big sprint event in Kenya. In the next years, we want to make it one of the silver or bronze level in the World Athletics calendar. But next year, we're starting it as a national event. So with that, we want to bring a lot of money, like I said, have a good prize money so that everybody now works hard to get into that level of competition. And just because they can't travel to Europe to compete in the Diamond Leagues, now let's bring the event to them. So with that, we will create that for the athletics. And then even other clubs. We've done tennis, so we want to do rugby as well. We want to do all the other sports. The main thing for that is just bring the money into the pockets of the athletes. And with that, it brings role models. Because right now, if you tell a parent, I want my son to do sports, they'll tell you they don't want that. They want their children to go to school, get a good job, and that's the cycle they want their children to go through. Because they don't have the role models who parents can say, I want you to become like someone who we have seen have made it out of sports. So that's one thing that we want to create and just have so many role models around our community in matter sports.
Thank you, Ferdinand. And you talk about even, and of course, there's your neighbor Rwanda made of events one of its economic pillar. Talking about events, if we look ahead to 2026, Nairobi is going to host the Africa-France Summit. Excellency, can you tell us how this event will help accelerate connection, innovations, and investments here?
Thank you. I'll have to be cautious because we're still developing the concept. But I think first, we made a joint decision between Kenya and France to host this summit here in Africa, in Kenya. And I think it has a lot of value to do it in a place like Kenya for the reason we were talking about, we were discussing this morning. Because this is a center of entrepreneurship, innovation, dynamism, an indigenous private sector. So this is sort of underlines the reason behind hosting such an event in Kenya. And I think it is also related to the fact that France and Kenya are very convergent when it comes to addressing global issues. And one of the biggest global issues over time, and I think you won't disagree with me, is the issue of climate change, which is actually biting everywhere, but certainly more in Africa. And so the aim of the summit will also showcase solution, being financing, being technological, in terms of addressing the very nature of climate change. So it will be a summit of heads of state, but there will be also some engagement, what we call it civil society, but civil society is a sort of a broader concept, whereby I personally, and I will fight for it, will have to give a big space to the private sector, because to the point we are making this morning, the private sector is the sources of most of the solution when it comes to those issues.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Angela, if we have a look at your history, like your Kenyan, but also Pan-African network and international career, which outcome or partnership as young leader of the French African Foundation would you like to see from that summit?
I think with increased focus on reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and meeting of net zero targets in line with commitments that countries have made, for purposes of the Paris Agreement. I think it would be great if businesses, and people can get a lot more support, in particular financial support for purposes of managing transition risk. For hard to abate sectors, including mining and metals, cement, etc., I think it would be great if they can get access for the emissions reductions technology that is required to facilitate transition for those hard to abate sectors. With regard to innovation, having experience working with an IFI, I think it would be great if businesses, especially African businesses, can get the necessary support that's required for them to access international markets. And one of the ways that can happen is through expansion of network corridors, particularly into the Middle East as well as Southeast Asia, and also in terms of diversification of supply chain risk. I feel that China Plus One strategy has been quite helpful for a lot of, emerging markets entrepreneurs, but the real impact is yet to be felt in Africa. So that is, I think, one point that probably needs a lot more focus.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. But how do we make them converge, on building a partnership? We are talking about building a framework, but everybody has this kind of specific rule. So what do you think?
I think that is also a problem that's global. I think there's need for a lot more interoperability in terms of the way people do things, and also in terms of legislation, such that we can always have either one point of contact when seeing how to address problem, or having, approaches, particularly from a regulatory perspective, that have sweep up impact in terms of application, so that clients and even entrepreneurs do not end up in situations where they have to comply with different, policies based on different legal regimes, because at the end of the day, it's not a very efficient approach to problem solving.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for this very inspiring exchange. We have 10 minutes to have a question from the room. If you can just introduce yourself and then ask the question.
Hello, thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Counsel. My question is on the intersection between sports and private markets and investment in sport as what they call an asset class. And this comes from the point of view that traditionally sport has been seen as an extracurricular activity. So parents don't take children to school to learn a sport. It just comes along with it, yeah? But, with the success stories, like the ones we have in the room, obviously, how do we have sport, because it's not one of the ideal jobs that you'll have parents educating. You're not educated to be a sprinter or to play basketball or anything like that. Yeah. But I've seen success stories in Kenya with the example of basketball and a team called Twende. Yep. Thanks. So how can the private sector, invest in sport, and what is the return for them in that? So, directed to Manala. Thanks.
Like I said, we want to change that notion, because now we really don't have role models. If you look at the role models that we have right now, after retirement, they don't have anything to show. And now the problem is they really don't even get education of how to handle all these things that are coming into their sports careers, and they're peaked. So as much as we want to focus more on developing the sports, we want to empower these young kids and these young men and women into how to just take care of themselves. The part where you should be humble when the fame and money comes. So you see, with all that thing, we don't really have role models. So that's one thing I want to change. And one of the things that I really believe in is education. Education, the bottom line of everything is education. Because once you get educated and get into the world, you're exposed already. Get into a university and just see how people are living in different cultures. So that's the gap that we want to bridge. The question that we asked, how the private sector want to come in. That's why I came in with the Manyala Foundation, because we have a whole structure set up. Like I said, we have clubs that we want to get into. We want to start from high schools. Because now the problem with our country is there's a lot of corruption. Before you get into a team, you have to know someone. And now the problem now comes when the raw talent doesn't really have connection. So that's now where the foundation is coming to bridge the gap. We're going to take the talents from high school. Actually, for sprinting, we're going to start from the primary school level. Because now we'll get these primary school kids, work with them through the high schools. Now the plan we have in the high schools, we'll have the regions. Every one of the schools in each region will have a camp for schools. So when these kids from primary schools are scouted and their talents have been seen, they are put into the high schools that we have the camps in it. So in those specific high schools, we'll have coaches who are trained. Now that's another problem that we have as a country. Everybody becomes a coach. I'm sure somewhere here, maybe someone in this room has advised me in one way or another that I should start well when I'm running. So everybody's becoming a coach. Now that's another thing that we need to bridge that gap, because now we don't have qualified coaches, especially for sprints. So we'll have these coaches trained, and we already have a program actually with Miramal that they're going to help us train these coaches. So now, when they get into high school, they'll get through the system knowing what sprint is all about. So once they're done with high school, now they can come into the Manyala camp called Sprint Achievers. That's the camp that will be dealing specifically with sprinting. Now, the question of how do we get back the money? So all that investments, all these athletes, we want to nurture them into becoming professional athletes. And at some point when I was presenting, I told you we make around 50, 60 million shots on, and I'm number 2 in the world. So imagine number 1, how much they're making. So if these all these athletes can turn professional and being connected in different companies, and then all this money, there's a contract that all these athletes will sign. And there's that management fees that comes back to the, where they started from. Same to all other sports.
Thank you.
Football and all that.
I think that especially on that issues of contracts and other investment issues, Angela can rebound on this. No?
I just wanted to
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in addition to the problems that Ferdinand mentioned, we probably need to change our socialization around sport. It's not really seen as a career choice, especially in this part of the world, or even a way by which someone can make money, and that sometimes becomes problematic because it's more of a perception problem. I remember I was a master's swimmer for a very long time, and I got to a point where nothing was going to happen because my parents never saw it as a way to make money. It was more of, kind of a hobby. And, that's where things ended. Yeah. So that change in attitude would actually be also quite helpful for sport as an industry.
Okay, we have time for one last question. If you can introduce yourself. apt question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Meghouar. I'm launching a facial recognition company in 2 months, and I've been working with so many startups in Kenya. And my question is actually to the French African Foundation. One thing I noticed about startups, some of them have value propositions that can be scaled, but when you're talking about scale, they either go to Nigeria, Ghana, UK, or US, never to France. So I'm asking you if there's concrete steps we've taken to bridge the asymmetry of information that exists currently. Because myself, I studied in France, so I know the opportunities. But for the Kenyan startups and East Africa, maybe, and Anglophone, are there concrete steps that you're taking to bridge that gap?
Thank you for your question. So I briefly answer, and then I share with a colleague from the ambassador, who can give some highlights about it. So at the foundation, what we do is that we won't fund directly, but we have a strong network first of funders, partners, and within our alumni, different people that operate in various fields that can be very interesting. So this is one thing. The second thing is that, of course, also we have different partners from the public sector and private sector, including BPI, BPI France. We can connect you to that ecosystem actually that would be very interested in looking for opportunities and investments in Kenya, in innovation, and also in the Eastern region. And of course, there is what we would call the Team France that gathers a lot of actors that are real supporters to French, to Kenyan, and to East African companies, entrepreneurs. And this I will give this speech to Vincent if you want to react on some actors, public French actors that support.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I think France and Kenya have very young tech entrepreneurs. And I see it because some of us young French tech entrepreneurs come to Kenya because, as we have seen this morning, the environment is very conducive. It is also a very tech-prone country. And so I think this is how it comes. And then you cannot come here and not work with the Kenyans. So there's this cross-pollination, I will call it, hybridation, that is happening. And I can see French startup, I don't know anymore if they are French, if they're Kenyans, you know. To tell you one story, nobody knows that the leader of e-commerce in this country is Jumia, was founded by French engineers. So they come here. It happens here, and because of this sort of exchange and collaboration and partnership with Kenya, you have good stories. So to the French that are an appetite for investing in Africa, I'll tell them Karibu Kenya.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and I think we'll end with this word. Thank you, all of you, for your participation and for sharing your expertise and eye on these subjects. So we'll move to our next panel.